Chant, we all join in. Ialaya is the first and most significant one of the day. Child learns and intended for this viral moment when the Ikaros sunlight first touches the ocean of sound and everything can begin in the jungle. Under the clear sky, we can almost fade away into the intense sunlight on its way to Cam steering the canoe. Staying in for the first and fourth seasons, just behind me calls out the home of the Kanaku, the rise and the bird and the can through. Sigh. Last moment of stillness, and this is what called Eastern eggs. So the bright sunlight and the teach of the ocean ahead of us, and the galley, and the galeon. And the galeon? Galley? No. The imwa, the eshtek. And the sixth, last day, and paddles pretty brutal into the water simultaneously. The voyage has begun. Pull to start 5 months. I'm lying on my tummy at the edge of the giant ice flue. The mat is standing when I nod. He strides across the ocean floor. Long shadows when the clouds allow. Even though this is 6 months away and constant daylight, the sun feels purely decorative and a cascade of soft, subtle illumination which will never stop you warm. The energy flow here is mostly invisible, directed upwards and downwards around me, and the earth itself glowing, radiating infrared light. That's an obstacle. And we just keep going into the space, a clear day of the universe. This process is a crucial entry in the Earth's energy on budget. But we still can't predict it exactly because we are on this ice flow. We're in the middle of these mechanics, surrounded by the liquid clockwork, and we want to know cocktail recipes, cocktails all around us, cocktails on the floor. The cohort of scientists and Sidon and Od. So Odin, he's here to observe. Measuring, analyzing the spectacular environment, and using the latest equipment and logic to deduce the inner workings of the ocean of atmosphere. Matt returns with 3 of the warriors and settlers on a good cycle. The Trinston down, out of the natural environment. Data are hard won, and that often means that we're greatly physically effortless. We want the platform to be floating away from the ice edge so it can take the measurements showing the maneuvers and the platforming away from the watch seeings. Once we're happy, we anchor it in place and we prepare to return to the ship of the gathering. Beneath the ice we're standing on, the Ician seat, and quiet as cold, always there, punished rarely. The center of attention, the Earth's oceans that are vast, and yet they're terrible. They seem invisible. We had to go into the space to really appreciate that defining feature of our planet. It's not the dog, it's the land but water. And Apollo, the program, sent men to the moon. But I think it's the most significant achievement, so let that be. 2 of the Oysters' influential photos ever taken by the shifted out perspective of Alice in Wonderland. Taken in 1968, the significant fragile blue sphere floating in the cosmos. Everything we've ever known on board, but even with the blue was seen. The canvas on which the land was drawn, and the emptiness between the great continents of misery, Africa and Asia. 50 years from the Apollo, humans are still in Algeria, doubting the real final start of paying proper attention to what's within these vast NASA expanses of human consciousness. It's overdue, but those forays into the space gave us the necessary standing point, the blank map space filled in, with the maps of Earth that are rich and conquering, the astonishing treasures troves and globes, and even better, bananas on jungle, the anatomy of the planet, and the full fascinating detail of coastlines, mountains, ranges, and livers that cannot produce more albumin, full of patterns and yet so varied. It seems endless because it is. The more closely you look, the more there you see it, the lumpy continent giving shape to the blue ocean, and then we split our home, the planet, into land and sea. It's natural to label land with the fixed features. And the labels can last for decades and centuries without change, but every wonderful woman knows that she's a cook. I've seen it godly guilty on misleading the one fundamental way. The fake will make it careless. It's pretty far north. Important and breathtaking features of our planet, Antarctica. The ocean moves. The blue earth is so gigantic in its engine, a dynamic liquid powerhouse that stretches around the planet's core and connects to every part of our lives, meaningless as they are. It's the component on every scale, from the mighty Gulf Stream and gliding through the Atlantic through the tiny bubbles of UAE, bursting at the top of the breaking wreckage of mindless tombs and tones of beautiful, profound consequences of Civ 7. The complex can seem overwhelming, but at the largest scale, the logic is harmless. It's full and immune to human cynicism on the face card. Our task is simpler and more fulfilling. The key to unraveling the internal logic of popular platforms, we're bowing out the instinct and follow the energy of the movement itself. The planetary interlap, the following flow of the mighty energy output of the sun, preventing it from the cycle, floating onward, and we catch this guy before he goes in the bitnik. So diverting and slower than the path through the mechanics of the ocean atmosphere, ice, rock, life, and leaf. It's our way. The planetary system, this energy is carried out by the atmospheric winds and builds both mighty oak trees and the delicate lichen, the stone walls and the shapes on the spur of the silky lines lifting 1,000,000,000,000 tons of water into the sky on the demanding hop hoop, leaps and bounds and fuels, and every owl, every single one ounce. You power up the laptop I'm typing on. Me. hosting the majority of these flowing energy ethers on the movement, deep and broad, home to vast, heating and cooling the surrounding as it goes, but energy is Greninja crazy over a temporary house. You see, eventually, after the bodybuilding energy leaks away from the Earth's heat and res, so flow away. The first low of the day is nor destroyed, so the giant, if he flows in and out of the balance. And Earth is just a cascade, a myriad of form. I grill the cheese, and I know that it is as good as it was before. The Earth is working on the dyes that are pretty good. That is necessary because it's a luxury. So the Earth, the cascade of cascades, the waterfall of diversion, unable to stop the flood by tapping into the trickiest parts. The engine for converting sunlight into movement and life on its base before the universe reclaims the loans. Wow, you know the sunlight, it reaches everywhere, but it's more intense close to the equator because there's a sound-light heat overload, and the Equatorian equator regions that receive far more of this lunar energy than the poles and the Norwegians. However, the Earth loses much more from the Dutch. Plenty of energy. Greenland is the loss from the polar bear regions. The much mean over the equatorial region experience a net gain of energy from the universe. I get it, GitHub. So riddled of a past of the Red Riding Hood. They all have their role to play. Describing the ocean as an engine is not metaphorical. I can heat it up and I can give it the medicine you need. We're used to the sort of the solid metal temperature, heavily tuned, enough to fry an egg. The industrial rev is going to take long because it's abandoning democracy for a republic on the high ooze that's more character. The stream-powered steel dragon and a beautiful sleigh, it's satisfying in a way that's more modern, because you can see exactly how they work. The piston drives the witch wheel. We hurt on this little scale, and we drive the oranges, the slices, so that we can create little witchy charms for the pistons that drive and derive from the wheel down, and ADHD Paris Hilton. So soaking the sequence of cause and effect is mesmerizing, but an engine doesn't have to be made out of solid matter. It's a land-ocean atmosphere blurb in the Pangea astronomy. I can follow up with a pretty bip dip. So, of that heat, almost immediately I drive momentarily with a convection. It's a warm waterway, and the air above it is also warm, making it buoyant, so newly warmed, and pushed upwards. As a wind across the ocean surface is St. Patrick's Day Lasagna, but it's only on way route. I do imagine selling my soul to the biddle is broken. Gold lumps, and what do you expect? Ocean heat, but flawless in its endless fascinating mosaic of words. The Earth is blue and green, closely connected to the other global components, like the stars and the planetary machinery floating around it in trapped, I'd say. The engine is what Earth is, two, in a giant underwear current. The waterfall is howling. It's a life. Nutrients, oxygen, trace metals like potassium and alkalines, iron shaping fur coasts and transporting heat. This isn't just another engine, it's the grandest of all an engine of size of the planet. It's all got the intelligence and elegance of the most ingenious human-built engine of the mechanics that are more subtle and intricate. Instead of lighting up the mind with something definite and something, it's hard to say where there's pushes of that and the absorbed mind on the ADHD file from Google Drive. But even though it's a binocular event of the PDF by the blue da-boo-dee-da-boo-die, it's still Android in its asset and not iOS. Its sort of perspective shift that can give vertigo. As citizens, here we are, great city piggybacked on the deep blue stuff, our tiny vulnerable vessel trading off and exploring the deep surface that took the Nook. I know whole societies have grown up around the fertile palaces, responding to the unseen mechanics without the platypuses and shandapusses. So it's a compound with the best. Even on this deeply woven human culture, it's the threading that's always lacking in energy flow. But even though they can't see the whole thing, the intelligent and observant human that feels excluded knows I'm fed into the culture, the myths, the stories, I'm explained the patterns, and I'm provided for. I'm myself a foundation for thinking about the beep, what it was, why it mattered, and why the humans should behave towards it. Attitudes that are sophisticated in the main other continents, wild. And every culture's attitude is so partly a geographical accident in itself. Science and culture are far more or less dangerous indeed on a bad day. In Britain, for example, a trip to the local seaside shore is Clara declaring that she visits the beach where she's often associated with those shells without falling flat on her face, looking under the sea and deciding if she really wants to wear that red hair again. Because, as G.B. Boone said once, I painted a tranquil sea and idyllic coastline. But the clear implication is that the sea was forward-looking at all. Turner is best known for the painting of the ships being tossed about 5'5". Angry clouds reinforced by the British, as once exampled by the heroic statement, the tale of the Da. Oh, the darkness of the subarctic wild wilderness. I don't know, it's not really the sort of description that encourages and count as me the best bystander pop a long way. I've looked for them all around and I only found the British, the Icelanders, and the perched Norwegians at the top of the pole. It's the totem pole. It's a nation built on fishing and the boosts and the heritage maritime that's lasted for centuries. But the exploits that are not being used are onto the harbor. You meet a series of large display boards, each board even more than the previous one. I spent a whole hour up here, to see and get the fish not to play. The sea around Iceland can be a fierce, dangerous pursuit for the Japanese. I know the grandeur of this game. On the other side of the world, Hawaiians, where their Honolulu airport, very proud, very good, very demure, close to the equator, squalls, and the smooth ocean swells mastery of the Hawaiian society. So the babalubu, up the koopadoobu, loop-a-da-da-doo, ba-ba-ba-ba. My mom, into the ocean physics floor, she wasn't planned or expected. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, where the ocean is considered by the very exotic concept of kudaba. Two seas by the Dutch, North Sea to the east by the Polish. And now I'm interested in the Earth being flat. I finished with this experimental thought, this 6 months of writing up this text to be without quite so much cleaning up. So the Duke of Oceanography, I'm taking a chance and I'm inviting me to work with the pot. So I love the scripts, and I know we're the three geeks of grants completely leaving at home, and others knowing this familiar way of wanting, and then one day a giant frame turning up the tulip. It's a way to design and make the measurement fit, and I'm solid and serious. I'm lurking nearby the wall as a giant spider as my colleagues fuss around me. So I'm excited. At first, I just listen and absorb, and I try to contain my astonishment, but very soon afterwards, the mystified indignation takes over me. And how was that no one had ever told me about any of this? How had I mangled in through the way, got 3 physics degree, and AIs everywhere, hosting podcasts for the best of us? I'm still baffled by this. The giant flows, the water engine, and you're fascinated by me. We know this is merely a diverting tale about some salty water. I've heard it before. My arrival is in the world out-triggered by the canoe story, the unplanned and the unexpected twists and turns. I'm new to this London. I hear some of the mentions by the West Pacific Drafting at 7 Canoe Club. I didn't know what an out-trigger is, reckoned by those small groups of bonketh enthusiasts, and Thames, estuary, and designed for the equatorial, spent. I'm unlike any other sport. I've tried this before, and I know it was welcoming to other ohana. This is where people stepped up and needed no more tolerating difference. And I learned this as a bubble scientist. The low and the high. I could switch my view from one of the perspectives to the other. But I'm not sure that they weren't as separate as they seemed. As a scientist, but there before that, I'm human. How did the people of the greatest sun civilization on Earth and the Pacific Islanders see this thing and use scrutinize and synchronize and synchronize with a synthesizer? I only see the physical engine, no cultural housing at all. First, I understand the symbolized complementary warway in the AI tradition and the culture of the ocean through the Japanese. Hello! When you splash through my wave at the beach, you're connected to me via salt water and sweat. So it's every drop. You might have to go the long way around, but you can get some exotic parrotfish. You can get some hydrometal, and you know that I know the etchet. But although challenging, traveled through other deeper realms, the Sistine Chapel. I'm waiting for this to pursue. The great example of the expedition discoveries in the challenge chieftain, Magalhães. Yes, a story that has been made and borne to the expense and difficulty mounting these tries. Suddenly, the military was interested in understanding. Then came the satellite data with the subtleties and which new links. The ocean is an intimate connection traveling across the story. It's finished and tired. It grips to the El Nino. It's the GDP of a small country like Belarus, an increasing awareness of my effort to maintain California. But this conversation hog is facing a massive obstacle. It's vaguely different in its learning parts. The self-personal life support system school, I know no longer to engage with a citizen.